Thanks for that introduction, Peter. So just move into the discussion section of the meeting. So people, just in this section, people can make a point or ask a direct question to Peter. So Peter may want to come back immediately, or we may want to let this run for a while and Peter can come back when a number of points have been accumulated. So most people are on camera. So if people on camera want to make a point, just raise your hand. Those off camera can just use the raise hand icon that's available in Zoom. So I'll just see John indicating. We need to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to ask two questions. I'm hoping to get in later on, or 2 pointers really. One is that Peter hasn't said anything at all about Jacobin. And I think, you know, alongside the sort of organizational thing, there's, you know, an ideological thing, right? People are fighting about ideology, about overall theory and so on. And Jacobin seem to be somewhere at the other end of the pole from Peter. The other thing is that this division, if you like, I mean, we're interested in it because it's universal. You know, the group we're in, the Fourth International, which is the biggest of the international groups, has been very, very friendly towards the Vote Joe wing. Has been far from hostile, and also a growing sort of tendency is in Ireland is the thing to do next is to vote Sinn Féin, and that, you know, not, these are all sort of a common stream that's happening to the socialist movement, which is we're not doing so well. There are these capitalist parties that are doing a bit better. Hang around with them and maybe get a voice, right? So that's the, you know, just like Peter to say a bit more about those two, A, Jacobin, and B, the international tendency that sort of copies what's happening in America.
Okay, so anyone else just want to pose a question or make a point?
Can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. I want, I'm in this situation in Denmark where the section is in a reformist party, but not in an entrism tactical way, but dissolving itself in politically, actually. So my question is, does this entrism, does it actually, does it function? Do you actually win anybody? This is one question. I think also the entrism is very much a question of when to break. How do you consider that? And the other question is there any is there any perspective in the next period of a fusion of any of the far left groups, Tempest and others, and if so, on what basis would that be? Thanks.
So there's a number of questions there. Does anyone else want to come in? Maybe I'll just bring Peter back at this point because there's a number of questions that were in there. So would you like to respond?
Sure, yes. Well, John is right. I should have spoken about Jacobin. I had it in my notes, but I was cramming so much in, I jumped over that point. Jacobin in the early days of DSA was certainly the journal of DSA in 2017, 2018. That's changed. And that's changed partly because Jacobin has consolidated as a petty capitalist business, and its standing in DSA has fallen a good deal among activists. So it's viewed as a commercial operation, which has some interesting articles, but no longer is the guide. Partly this is because these caucuses have formed, and nearly all of them, not nearly all of them, the ones I named are to the left of Jacobin and are critical of it on one thing or another. So there's publishing in Jacobin, and probably most DSAers read it and probably most identify with it, but it isn't the journal of DSA that it was in the first couple of years. Its line is very much a social democratic line. It's a neo-Kautskian line, and they've got some very sophisticated, supposedly, revivals of Kautsky. Some of them want to revive Kautsky of the 1920s and 1930s. Most of them talk about the good Kautsky before 1914, but they then try to indicate a continuity between Kautsky's attitude and their own now, basically saying that there's an electoral road to socialism. So Kautsky becomes the theoretician of the electoral road to socialism, and Jacobin finds many ways of introducing that. For example, they write about the election in Chile, and that's their angle. Or they write about the history of the Labour Party in Britain, and that's their angle. It's all about an electoral road to socialism. It's all about reformism. So they're influential, they're important. Sometimes it's important to reply to them, but the fight among the caucuses in DSA has gone beyond just a fight over Jacobin. Now, it's certainly true that the Fourth International United Secretariat side has copied DSA and feels close to DSA and close to those from the Socialist Workers' Party tradition who are in DSA and favor DSA moderation. That meant being friendly toward votes to Joe, but I think the basis of that is the broad left party conception. It's a conception which I know John and Socialist Democracy know very well, that it's impossible to build a revolutionary party or a revolutionary international. So what you do is to promote and join broad left formations on a national level right now, because there aren't any on an international level, but in principle on an international level too, and you become a current within this broad left party. Now, what's happened, as you well know, is that in country after country, the broad left parties have failed. They've sold out. They've gone over to neoliberalism. So the Fourth International ended up in a situation where it still did have broad left parties. It was oriented to, well, it lost Brazil, it lost Italy, it lost Spain, eventually lost Spain, it lost Greece before that. Now it's down to really Portugal and Denmark. That's what's left of that orientation. But they felt around 2016 that the English speakers of the world might save them, that Jeremy Corbyn in Britain and Bernie Sanders in the US might revive the broad left party that had failed in continental Europe. Well, of course, that didn't happen. And I think the Corbyn experience is now pretty clear. He didn't really offer an alternative and got clobbered. It's also true Bernie Sanders didn't really offer an alternative and got clobbered. And the people in Solidarity even, but in other places too, who said vote for Biden to stop Trump, or the way they put it as a slogan was stop Trump, fight Biden. Of course, nobody ever got around to fighting Biden. It was stop Trump by voting for Biden. They often, a lot of them now feel swindled. And I don't think the US supporters of that orientation in 2020 are promoting Biden at this point. They know that didn't work and they can't do that. Nonetheless, the idea still remains, and it'll be there again this fall. You've got to vote Democratic in order to not get the Republicans in. I think that the left, including DSA, will probably do that in private, but they're not going to do it publicly. DSA did not support Biden. That's an important fact. They had committed themselves to what they called Bernie or bust, either Bernie Sanders or nobody. And they couldn't go back on that because too much of the membership was committed to that position. But I think certainly a majority of DSAers voted for Biden, and some of them argued for him. So I think the basic problem is the broad left party's orientation of something other than a revolutionary working class party and international as the way to socialism. That because that failed, that became Jeremy Corbyn in Britain, Bernie Sanders in the US. That has failed now. And I think they're just floundering about what to do next. We can talk more about the FI, but I'll leave that there. With regard to the Red-Green Alliance and the Socialist Workers' Party, or SAP, in the Red-Green Alliance and entrism in general, yeah, entrism functions. In the US, Tempest has grown from, let's say, 20 to 120 people in a year. And part of that is bringing in former ISOers who were looking for a home. But a lot of that is bringing in people from DSA who said Tempest is telling the truth. The others are not. And because of that, joined. Solidarity's picked up some from DSA, but not as many because it's not been as bold in DSA as Tempest has. Certainly Reform and Revolution has picked up people in DSA. Socialist Alternative has. Bread and Roses has. The Bread and Roses left has. So I think for those various political tendencies, they have gained from it. Now, I think Yetta is correct to say, because there were tens of thousands of young people looking for a home, looking for where should I go? And some of them, a minority, look further to the left and some to revolutionary socialism. Now, a key question that Yetta asked is when to break. And it's good for me to hear that from Yetta and from other comrades, because when you're involved in something like DSA, it's not always so clear when to break. As I said, Northern Michigan DSA has decided to basically hibernate as a revolutionary socialist, or maybe just generally socialist reading group, depending on who's in the reading group. But I haven't gotten to the point of wanting to resign from DSA or stop paying dues, it would be. And that's because I think there's still some possibilities nationally. Now, where would it become too compromised? Well, I think if DSA as an organization supported Biden or the Democrats in general, that would be too much. That would certainly be the time to split. So long as they're saying we support socialists who are running as socialists on the Democratic Party ticket, but no broader endorsement of Democrats, and that is their current policy, then it seems to me it's not yet the time to break. AOC and the squad give blanket support for Democrats. If DSA adopted that position, if they adopted the squad position, then it would certainly be time to go. But I'm certainly open to argument. It seems to me at this point, there are enough undecided people who can be won so that it's still worth being there and fighting over issues like you may have seen Jamal Bowman voted for the Iron Dome defense of Israel and caught a lot of flack. I think a majority of DSA opposes that, although they are faced with, do we want elected officials? If we do, we have to accept that they're going to make these compromises. Probably a majority think the compromise is necessary, but a big minority think it is not. and want people like Bowman out of DSA. As long as there are still fights over that kind of thing, it seems to me worth it. Until DSA takes a stand that is absolutely impossible to go along, not to go along with, we don't go along with any of it, but that is impossible to be in any way associated with. Now, the perspectives of fusion of the far left, that's a hard one in the US, it always is. At this point, as I said, I'm a member of Solidarity and Tempest, and I'm certainly arguing in both of them quite openly that they should unite. The Tempest is, in my opinion, the best of what's left of the ISO after it collapsed in 2019, basically because it couldn't figure out a policy toward DSA that made any sense. They and in Solidarity, most of the right wing of Solidarity that thought that DSA was enough have quit, they've left. So what there is a kind of left rump of Solidarity with what's the best of what there is of DSA, having picked up some more from the best of what is left of the ISO, having picked up some from DSA. I think they should come together. It would not so much because of numbers, although that would mean getting back to an organization of 300 or so in the US, which we don't really have now. Well, socialist alternative, we can discuss separately, that's bigger, but the ISO is gone, Solidarity has shrunk. I think that fusion would be highly desirable, and there is receptivity in both Solidarity and Tempest to that. Will it happen? I don't know. I think it depends a lot on whether people are just so comfortable with the sort of clique that they're in that they're not willing to risk it by uniting with another clique. It's possible the fusion won't happen, but I think it could happen. If it did happen, it would happen on a clear revolutionary socialist basis. And because there's really little programmatic difference between the two. I can go into detail of what that would be, but I'm pretty sure from what I know of socialist democracy that we would agree, that you would agree with that basis. You'll certainly get copies of any documents, we'll certainly send them to you, and you can state your opinion on whether you think it's principled or not, assuming we get that far. So let me stop with those answers.
All right, that's a very comprehensive response. So we'll just go around again. So does anyone want to pose a question to Peter or make their own point? So just indicate with your hand or use the Zoom. Yeah, Danny.
Yeah, it's quite fractured, and there's quite a lot of the whole idea of caucuses as well. I kind of like the idea of caucuses because it gives there's different perspectives in a party, like, and you can kind of, but so long as they're able to come together in agreement, on a way forward without going off and splitting into further factions. But trade union membership seems to be on the rise in the United States. Is there a drive within the DSA to, towards trade union membership, and for the likes of Amazon workers and that, is there much of a because there's certain legislation now where they've kind of, I think Biden has made it easier for collective bargaining at present, as far as I remember reading something about that a couple of weeks ago or something like that. But is there a drive towards trade union membership? And maybe with that you could have building grassroots campaigns would bolster the amount of people in the left, like, because although the DSA, I was reading that it went from 5,000 to 100,000, like in the last few years, like, but with trade union membership and a drive for with the inflation, that with drive for higher wages, that could be a way of boosting the left, both here and the United States.
Okay, so that's a question, but I'm going to ask Peter to come back immediately. So does anyone else want to ask a question or make a point? So just indicate with your hand, and if you're off camera, just use the Zoom icon. Yep, go ahead.
Yes, in the political scene in Denmark, the Ukraine war has been a splitting point, I would say. It's the old story about how these types of huge international events split people, and they are posed on different sides. So the Unity List have been voting for sanctions, heavy sanctions, and military equipment to be sent to Ukraine. So this has created a huge crisis within the left, and of course a huge confusion. What is the situation in the US on this? Is it a hot question, I would suppose, and in which way is it handled by these the far left groups you have mentioned, especially those who are possible groups to fuse?
Yep, got another indication from John. You need to unmute.
Right. Is that me?
Yep.
So I sort of disagree with Peter slightly, not completely, but you can take it into. I think what we're seeing is a retreat of the socialist movement. And one of the things about that retreat is you don't learn any lessons. So the early broad left party conception around Scottish Socialist Party and so on and so forth is quite different from Podemos and Syriza. And then when you came to Syriza, the support for Syriza involved excommunicating the actual members of your own organization who were in Greece. And then this latest fad, which is fairly quiet, but it's there all right, to vote for a Sinn Féin government in Ireland. I mean, anybody who's looking, Sinn Féin is a capitalist party. There's no way they're even remotely socialist. Not only the capitalist party, they're they're a capitalist party who was co-opted through signing up to an imperialist settlement. So you're not going to get too much out of them. I think you see that. So you saw the broad left party. And then after that, the FI had this orientation called anti-systemic. We're all going to go anti-systemic groups, rainbow coalitions. And then they had a meeting there, and the thrust was just broad something or other. It was almost incomprehensible what they were saying. But when you get on that path, you don't go backwards. You don't say, oh, I got that wrong, I must orientate to the working class again. That doesn't tend to happen. And actually, what we haven't really discussed is the war. And I think you can see an enormous collapse of the socialist movement with people demand, it's maybe most extreme in Denmark, provide arms to Ukraine. What we really want to do is nobody anywhere is saying, how do we establish peace in Ukraine? Nobody's saying that. How do we open talks? What are the demands of both sides? They're saying, no, give more guns, get more guns in there, get more bombs in there, and the left are going along with it. And I think the result of that will be an enormous split in the socialist movement. I think things will eventually harden out. You're either for genuine internationalism for the working class, or you're a campus Putinite, or you think that Boris Johnson's on the right track or something like that, or Keir Starmer, even worse. So maybe what I'm just saying at the end is that I think the thing that will turn things around is, you know, a restatement of theory and just getting people to come together around a basic statement. Something like we had somebody on recently who said he wanted to write a communist manifesto for the 21st century, and maybe we had that as a project, we might start getting somewhere. All
right, so it's coming up towards 8 o'clock, so I'm just going to go around our participants again, just ask if anyone before Peter summarizes and comes back to those questions. Is there anyone else that wants to come in, either ask a question or make their own point?
Hello, yeah, I've raised my hand.
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
All right. It's just that, hello to Peter. We haven't come across each other for quite a while now. Nice to see you. Back on the 31st of January, there was a picket outside Russia Today's headquarters in London. I think it was the most shameful demonstration, and I was really shocked at the participants. The anti-communist resistance, as they now call themselves, or no, sorry, they should call themselves the anti-capitalist resistance. Was represented by Fred LaPlatte, who made his speech for NATO. Pete Furman made his speech, who a former member. He made his speech for NATO on behalf of the Labour Representation Committee. There was Bill Bowring, who made his speech on behalf of the Haldane Society of Socialist Lawyers. Other luminaries like I forget the whole lot, but it was a really shocking capitulation. There was no two ways about it. This was a pro-NATO organization. Oh, and sorry, of course, organized by the Ukraine Solidarity Committee of infamous fucking back in 2014, and of course. The Alliance for Workers' Liberty, where else would they be except in a pro-imperialist mobilization? But they got John McDonnell there. They got 4 MPs there. They mobilized the force, and I think that is really shocking that you have such a force. My position is, I'm for the defeat of Ukraine, and I'm not calling for the withdrawal of U.S. troops. Or of Russian troops, because really I think that they have now surrounded the fascists around Mariupol, and they're going to sort them out. And those fascists have been bombarding the Donbass continually since 2014. And whatever the president might say, nobody tells them what to do. They are. You're outright fascist people, and without eliminating that force in that place, then we won't have any peace at all. Thank you.
Can I just say we don't agree with that? Just before anybody gets this.
Yeah, I thought you mightn't, but anyway.
No, we don't agree. Ukraine is not a fascist state.
No, it's not a fascist state, but it's just. There's loads of them there.
It's an independent capitalist country, and Russia doesn't have the right to invade.
No.
Okay, so we come to just after 8 o'clock. So I'll just ask again before I call on Peter to respond in a summary. Does anyone else want to make a point or ask the question? So this is the last time. This is the last time round for anyone who wants to do that. So is there any indications? No. So at this point, I'm just going to move into the summary and ask Peter to come back on those points were raised and any points he wants to make himself.